Coal is in the news these days because China, India, and other big coal consuming countries are short of it. But with the prospect of more coal production or more coal consumption, at least in the short term, comes the issue of emissions. And we generally think when we consider coal, we think about CO2 or particulate. But there's another side of it, and that is methane emissions. So I'm going to talk to Tomas Bredariol from the IEA about a new study that came out. It deals with methane emissions from oil and gas production and coal mining. So we'll talk about coal today. Welcome to the interview, Tomas.
Many thanks, Markham. Glad to be here.
Well, look, let's start with an overview of the study, please, at least the coal end. If you could speak to that, please.
Yeah, certainly. So our study is how do we get to 75% cut in methane emissions from fossil fuel operations? Now, the figure for oil and gas is a bit different than the figure for coal. When we talk about coal, the most important thing is really reducing the use of coal. And this is mostly driven by the transformation in the power sector, where we already have many available options, such as renewables, to coal power. But it also means tackling methane emissions from coal mines, managing better the methane that comes from the coal seams. So that drives about 40% of the reduction, whereas the other 55% comes from a reduction in coal use.
Now, are we talking about the actual production of coal, the mining operation that releases methane, or are we talking about methane that's emitted from the coal seam itself, maybe a combination of the two?
This is mostly methane that is within the mines. And the deeper the mine is, then the more likely it is that it has a large amount of methane. And so the ventilation systems, which are used for security and safety issues, they often release some amount of methane. And also when you are storing coal, transporting coal, there are some residual emissions in there that is methane associated with the coal that might come out and be released.
So how big is the problem? We understand, the magnitude on these. I think we mostly understand the magnitude on the oil and gas side. Is it as much a problem on the mining side?
Yes, it is. When so worldwide, we had about 120 megatons of methane emitted by fossil fuel operations. And when we take a look at the split, coal brought about 40 megatons. So that's 1/3 of the emissions from these types of operations. So it's a very large deal.
And what about mitigation measures? What can mines do to reduce their methane emissions?
There are two different types of measures. One is before the start of operations, you can drain boreholes, and then you can drain the gas, which will then be used either for heating purposes or, depending on the concentration on methane, it might even go to gas grids. Now, after you have started operations, that is a little bit more complicated. And what you can do is get the residual methane that is within the mines and often is already channeled through these ventilation systems and put it to use, either for heating the coal or drying it, or for power generation within the site. Sometimes when the concentrations are very low and you don't really have any infrastructure on the site, then what you can do is destroy the methane, which from a climate perspective is better than simply venting it.
Right. Now, what about transparency in terms of, from both governments and the companies who are involved in in coal mining? Is that a big issue?
Yes, the methane in general is an issue that we haven't seen that much attention. And that is especially true in the coal sector. Because of the low concentrations, we don't have that many projects, we don't have that many policies that really target methane from coal mines. So bringing more transparency in terms of where are the leaks, how they occur, that can really help drive action and make more stakeholders engage in the topic.
Now, we've seen a lot of discussion around the oil and gas side around measurement. And we're talking about now methane sniffing satellites, that sort of technology. Do we have the same measurement problem on the coal side?
We do. We very much do. And again, satellites are making a difference. The latest data already shows a number of large leaks in China, in the US, in Russia, and in several other key producers. So while often these leaks, methane leaks from coal mines, have a lower concentration, they are still large enough to be seen from satellites. And hopefully, as technology progresses and we get satellites that have a higher detection threshold, we will be gaining a better and better view of these emissions and be able to measure them more accurately.
Tomas, is there an international consensus amongst governments that something needs to be done? Are governments getting organized to act, or are we still at the beginning of this process?
I believe the Global Methane Pledge is a very clear call for action from governments on methane. Now, within the Global Methane Pledge, all methane from human activity is contemplated by the target. So this doesn't specify how much is from oil and gas, how much is from coal, and so on and so forth. But we from the International Energy Agency want to really highlight that in the energy sector, abatement opportunities for methane, they are really cost effective. So we can have a very high reduction, up to 75%. We estimate that is technologically feasible.
Right. Well, Tomas, thank you very much. Appreciate your insights on this.
Thank you very much, Markham.